There's nothing comforting about a familiar sound when it happens at the wrong time. Glad you're here. On this channel, we break down real 4chan stories from people who lived through unsettling moments and chose to share them. This one begins in a place that should feel safe, which makes everything after it feel worse. Get comfortable, turn the lights down, and subscribe. Let's go. The shop is behind a print place off Bardstown Road, up a narrow flight of stairs that used to lead to a dentist's office. You wouldn't find it unless you were looking, and that's how I like it. Most of my work comes through referrals, or a small ad I keep running in a hunting magazine out of Bowling Green. I work nights because it's quieter, and the freezer runs cheaper after dark, and because customers who bring me their business at 10 p.m. tend to be the kind who know what they want and don't want to talk long. October 2020. Louisville was in that half-shut way most of the country was. People weren't out much. Restaurants had the little plastic dividers up. I was actually glad for the work, because things had been slow all summer and my rent on the workshop had gone up in August. The guy called on a Tuesday, landline, which already told me he wasn't young. Polite voice, no rush in it. He said he had a small animal, a house pet, and would I be willing to preserve it? He used the word preserve, not mount, not stuff, preserve. I told him I do that kind of work sometimes, though I mostly work on game birds and the occasional deer head for the guys down in Shepherdsville. He asked what time worked. I said any time after 7. He said he'd come Thursday. Thursday, he showed up around 8. Gray coat, khaki slacks, boots that had been cleaned recently but weren't new. Maybe 60, maybe a little older. He was carrying a small cooler, the kind you'd take to a Little League game with a couple of Gatorades in it. He set it on my counter like it was something breakable. I appreciate you doing this, he said. She was a good little thing. Inside the cooler was a cat, gray tabby, maybe 7 or 8 pounds, wrapped in a clean bath towel. He'd used blue reusable ice packs, not loose ice, so there was no water damage. That's actually rare. Most people bring me a pet in a garbage bag with half the fur already coming off. This was different. This was almost professional. I told him I could do it. Standing pose, curled pose, whatever he wanted. He said he wanted her curled up like she was sleeping. He said the words softly. I quoted him $400. He paid $200 deposit in cash and said he'd be back in a week. He didn't ask any questions about the process, which some people do, mostly out of nervousness. He just thanked me and left. Walked down to a dark sedan parked at the curb and drove off toward Cherokee Park. From the window, I watched his taillights turn the corner. I got a fresh coffee going and put on the work light. The cat looked fine at first glance. That's what I want to say. She looked like a cat who had died. But the second I started my initial examination, before I'd made a single cut, I knew something was wrong. There was a puncture behind the left ear, very small, the kind you might make with an insulin needle, and I only noticed it because I was looking at the shape of the skull to plan the pose. The fur was parted around it in a way that suggested somebody had held the fur back to see what they were doing. Cats don't die like that. Cats die of kidney failure, of old age, of getting hit by a car out front on a Sunday afternoon. They don't get a clean needle mark behind the ear. I kept going. At that point, I'd been paid a deposit, and I was still telling myself there could be an explanation. Vet euthanasia, maybe. Some vets do it that way at home for old animals. Fair enough. That was a reasonable thing to land on. Then I turned her over. On the underside, along the belly, there were 4 small marks in a straight line. Not scratches, not from another animal. Small and deliberate, all evenly spaced, like something had been done with care and then allowed to heal. Some of them were older than others, weeks apart, maybe longer. I sat back on the stool for a while. The shop smelled the way it always does, like cold water and a little bit of borax, and the radiator was clicking because I'd turned it up when he was here, so he wouldn't think the place was grim. I could hear a car alarm going off 2 blocks over, and it went for maybe 10 minutes before somebody shut it up. I thought about the cooler, the ice packs, the clean towel. I thought about the way he'd said, "She was a good little thing," which is the kind of thing people say about a pet they loved. He'd said it in the tone you'd expect. Nothing off in the delivery, nothing off in his face. The needle mark could be a vet. I kept telling myself that. Vets do house calls, especially in a year like that one, when nobody wanted anyone in a waiting room. It could be nothing. The marks on the belly could be a skin condition, some kind of treatment site. There are things I don't know about cats, because I don't work on cats often. But you don't work with dead animals for 15 years without learning what a wound looks like and what a treatment looks like. And those marks weren't treatment. I finished the job anyway. I want to be honest about that. I finished it because I'd taken the deposit, and because I didn't have any proof of anything, and because I thought if I didn't finish it, he'd just take her somewhere else, and I'd have lost the only chance I had to see him again in person. The work took me most of a week. I found myself talking to her sometimes, under my breath, apologizing for something I hadn't done. She came out well, curled tight, tail over the nose, one ear folded down the way cats do when they're deep asleep. If you didn't know, you wouldn't know. He came back the following Thursday, same time, same coat. He looked at her for a long moment on the counter, and I saw him do something I wasn't ready for. His eyes got wet, just a little. He nodded slowly. "That's exactly right," he said. "That's exactly how she used to sleep, on the arm of the sofa, every night." He paid me the rest in cash. 20s, mostly, folded neat. He shook my hand, which most clients don't do, and thanked me twice. Then, in the doorway, with the cat in a paper shopping bag against his chest, he stopped and turned back. "I've got a lot of them at home," he said. "I could bring more if you're taking work." He said it the way you'd offer somebody a ride to the airport. Easy, friendly, as if he just remembered a small favor he could do for me. I don't remember exactly what I said. Something about being backed up through the end of the year. Something about the freezer being full. He nodded like that was completely reasonable, and told me to give him a call in the spring. He'd wait. No rush. Then he went down the stairs, and I heard his sedan start up and pull away from the curb, and I locked the door behind him even though I still had 2 hours of work to do. I sat at the counter for a while after that. I kept turning it over. I didn't have a name past what he'd given me on the phone, and I don't know if that name was real. I had a landline number. I had a general description. I had a car I couldn't tell you the make of, only that it was dark, 4 doors, older but well kept. I thought about the police. I thought about it hard, for probably 3 days. But what do you tell them? A man brought me a cat with a needle mark and some old scars. The cat is dead. The man is polite. There's no cat missing that anyone has reported. There's no evidence I could point to except my own opinion that the marks weren't accidental, and my opinion doesn't rise to a warrant. I finally wrote a letter, anonymous, to the local Humane Society. I described him. I described the car as best I could. I described the marks on the animal and what my read on them was. I gave the phone number he'd called from. I put the letter in a mailbox out by the airport, not near my shop, and I never heard anything back. I don't know if they did anything with it. I don't know if they even could. I kept working. Business picked back up in November. A guy from Elizabethtown brought me a 9-point buck, and I spent the better part of 2 weeks on it and forgot mostly. He didn't come back in the spring. He didn't call. Sometimes I wonder if the letter did something after all, or if he just found somebody less curious, or if he moved. The thing that stays with me is the sentence. I've got a lot of them at home. I've replayed it more times than I want to admit. Some nights it sounds like a man missing his other pets. Some nights it sounds like a man who was checking to see if I'd said yes. Some nights it sounds like he'd already decided which one he was bringing next, and my answer was the only thing in the whole conversation that mattered, and I got lucky by saying no. I still take work. I still keep night hours because that's when the shop is quiet and the freezer runs cheaper. But when the phone rings after 8 now, and the voice on the other end is older and polite and uses a word like preserve, I ask more questions than I used to. I ask where the animal came from. I ask about the vet. I ask things nobody would think to lie about ahead of time. Most of them answer easily. Most of them are just people who lost something they loved. Most of them. The thing about court reporting is your hands do the work before your brain catches up. After a few years on the machine, you stop hearing sentences and start feeling them. The steno keys go where they need to go. You can be thinking about what's for lunch and still put down a clean transcript. I'd been doing it for 11 years by September 2019. Mostly the same courtroom in the Mecklenburg County Courthouse in downtown Charlotte, 4th floor. The AC always ran too cold on that side of the building, and I kept a gray cardigan folded on the back of my chair. The case was a stalking charge, not the kind that makes the news. The complainant was a woman in her 30s who managed a hair salon in Ballantyne. The defendant had been a customer, then a bad customer, then something worse. Nothing physical had happened yet, which is why the charge was what it was. Text messages. Someone standing across the street from her building at odd hours. A note left on her windshield in the salon lot. He came into the courtroom in a navy suit that was a size too big for him. Clean shave, glasses. He looked like the guy who'd help you jump a car in a parking lot. That's the part people don't want to hear about these cases. The men usually look normal. If they looked like what you picture, nobody would have to file anything. The salon manager had waited almost a year before going to the police. His name was Kevin. I'll just say Kevin. He sat at the defense table with his hands folded and never once looked at his lawyer while she spoke. He looked at the witness. He looked at the jury. Twice, he looked at me. Being looked at is part of the job. I sit lower than everyone else, close to the front, and defendants sometimes stare because I'm one of the few people in the room who isn't looking back. My eyes are on the machine. But there's looking, and there's the other thing. Kevin's eyes settled on me the way you'd settle a coffee cup on a coaster, careful, like he was placing me somewhere for later. His testimony was on the second day. His lawyer walked him through his side of it. He answered in complete sentences. No ums, no pauses to think. If you'd played the audio without context, you'd assume he was a witness for the prosecution. I did drive past her salon a few times, he said. I'll admit that. My gym is on the same road. I never stopped. I never got out of my car. And the note on her windshield? I don't know anything about a note. Very tidy. He described his weekly routine in a level of detail that felt rehearsed, but not unnatural. The way people sound when they've been through it too many times. I put it all down. My fingers moved. My eyes drifted every so often to the clock above the jury box. We broke for lunch at 12:30. I always eat at my desk in the reporter's room down the hall. Habit. I bring a sandwich in a soft-sided cooler and read back my morning notes while I eat. Because if I catch a garbled section early, I can flag it before the afternoon session, when everything's still fresh. The room was empty. Fluorescent lights. That smell old office carpet gets when it's had 30 years of coffee spilled on it. I opened my laptop and pulled up the rough transcript. I ate half the sandwich before I hit it. There's a line where Kevin is describing his morning routine. He wakes up at 6, he says. He makes coffee. He goes to the gym on Providence Road. The audio was playing quietly in my earbuds while I scrolled, because that's how I do it. I match audio against text. The audio said, I make coffee, I go to the gym. The text on my screen said, I make coffee, I go to the gym. 4412 Halden Ridge Court. That is my address, not a street I'd driven past. The address of the townhouse I'd rented for 6 years, where my sister's dog stayed with me over Christmas, where I'd renewed the lease in July. I stopped chewing. I remember that very clearly, the sandwich just sitting in my mouth. I scrolled up. I scrolled down. I ran a search on the document for the number 4. The address appeared twice more. Once in a section where he was describing what he did on Tuesdays, once at the tail end of a sentence about his cousin's wedding. There was also, in the section about his cousin, a name that shouldn't have been there. Rachel. That's my sister. Not a common name in the family he was describing. Just Rachel, dropped into the middle of a list of other names, all of which matched the audio. And when his lawyer asked what kind of car he drove, the text listed his answer, a silver Nissan. And then, in the next sentence, unattached to any question, the words, Black Honda Civic 2015. That is what I drive. Steno machines don't write English. They write phonetic strokes that translation software turns into words on the screen. So when I say the address appeared in the text, either my fingers had hit the strokes for those words, or someone had typed them directly into the file. Nobody had touched my laptop. It hadn't left my sight since the morning session started. I'd taken it with me to the bathroom during the 10-minute recess because I always do. I sat there for a long time. The audio kept playing in my ear. Kevin's voice, calm, walking through his week. I muted it. I opened my paper notebook. I keep one for scribbling anything the machine can't catch. Judges' asides, off-record moments. I flipped through the pages from the morning. In the margin of one page, in my own handwriting, was my address again, underlined twice. I do not remember writing it. I would remember writing my own address in a notebook during a stalking trial. That is not the kind of thing you do and forget. The handwriting was mine. I'm left-handed and my lowercase g has a loop I've hated since I was 12. It was there, on the page, in blue ink. My pen was blue. The pen was still in my hand. I sat in that room until 1:20. I didn't eat the rest of the sandwich. At one point, I stood up and walked to the door and put my hand on the handle and then walked back and sat down again. I don't know why. I think part of me was waiting for the letters to move, to go back to whatever they were supposed to be. They didn't. I went to the afternoon session and I did my job. I could have gone to the clerk. I could have gone to the judge. I did not, because what was I going to say? That my machine wrote something I don't remember striking? That my own hand wrote something in my notebook I don't remember writing? During a break, when I was alone in a locked reporter's room, on a laptop nobody else touched. At one point in the afternoon, Kevin looked at me again. I had my eyes on the machine. I felt it on the side of my face like a warm spot. When court adjourned, I packed up. I stopped at the clerk's desk and told her I wasn't feeling well and wouldn't be in the next morning. She said, "Take care of yourself, honey. There's something going around." I made it to my car before I started shaking. I drove home the long way. I didn't check my mirrors more than usual. I want to say I did, but I didn't. I was tired in a way I have never been tired before or since. I called in sick the next day. A substitute finished the trial. I got the final transcript emailed to me a week later, per procedure, because my name was on the first 2 days. The address wasn't in it. Rachel wasn't in it. The Honda wasn't in it. I opened my rough file from that Tuesday, the one I'd been staring at while my sandwich went cold. The address wasn't in that file either. Not anywhere. I ran the search 3 times. I checked the file's modified date. It hadn't been touched since I saved it that afternoon. The notebook page with my address underlined twice was still there. I tore it out and put it in a drawer, and then a week later moved it to a folder in the back of my closet, because I didn't like knowing it was in a drawer I opened every day. Kevin got probation, 18 months, no jail time. His lawyer was good, and the evidence, as they say, was circumstantial. 3 weeks after the verdict, on a Saturday night, I was making pasta and I heard a car slow down outside my unit. I don't usually notice cars. My kitchen window faces the street. I looked out because the engine sat at idle for a beat too long before pulling away. Silver sedan. Nissan, I'm fairly sure, though I'm not a car person. Around 10:30 it came past again, from the other direction, slower the second time. I didn't see the driver. The angle was wrong, and the streetlight on my block has been out since August. I stood at the window for a long time after it was gone. The pasta water boiled over on the stove behind me, and I didn't move to turn it off until the smoke alarm went. My neighbor knocked on my door to see if I was all right. I told her I'd burned dinner. I moved to a different neighborhood in December. I did not tell anyone at work where. The folder is still on the shelf. The last Tuesday in May, the AC in our office had been broken for 2 weeks, and admin still hadn't sent anyone. That's the thing you have to understand first. It was hot, we had the fan going, and the fluorescent light above my desk had a click in it every 11 seconds or so. I'd counted. That's what I did between people. I counted the click. Rick, my supervisor, was on vacation that week. It was just me. When the office was empty, which was most of the time, I read a magazine somebody had left on the waiting area couch. An old National Geographic about elephants. I'd read the same 3 articles maybe 5 times by then. She came in around 2:40. I remember because I was staring at the wall clock and thinking about whether I could get away with leaving at 4 instead of 4:30. The bell on the front door jingled. I looked up. She was maybe 35. Dark hair pulled back, no makeup, wearing a blue t-shirt with a faded logo I couldn't read. Not crying. That was the first thing I noticed. Most people who come to file a missing persons report in Albuquerque, by the time they get to us, they're either already crying or holding it back so hard you can see it in their jaw. She just looked tired. "I need to report someone missing," she said. I gave her the form, told her to sit, take her time, come back when she was done. She sat in the plastic chair by the window and wrote for about 15 minutes. When she brought it back, her handwriting was neat, small block letters. She'd filled every line. Her name was Marisol. Her mother's name was Elena. Elena lived alone in a house off Candelaria, near the Rio Grande Nature Center, in a neighborhood with those low adobe walls and cottonwoods that turn yellow in October. Marisol said her mother hadn't answered her phone in 3 days. She'd driven over on Sunday, let herself in with the spare key, and the house was empty. Purse gone, car gone, bed made, no note. "Any history of memory issues?" I asked. "Dementia? Confusion?" "No, she's 62. She's healthy." "Any argument recently?" Marisol shook her head. "We had lunch on Wednesday. She was fine. She was talking about repainting the kitchen." I nodded. Standard stuff. I told her I was going to enter the report into our system and generate a case number. She could call the number I'd give her for updates. She said thank you. She said it like she'd rehearsed it on the drive over. I turned to the monitor. Our software is old, a green on black interface that hasn't been updated since maybe 2007. You type in the name, date of birth, last known address, and it runs a check against the county database. Usually the check takes about 6 seconds. There's a little bar that fills up. The bar filled. Then a red box came up in the middle of the screen. Match found. I've seen the box maybe twice in 4 years. Both times it was because someone had reported a person missing. That person had turned up, and the report hadn't been closed properly. Clerical stuff. I clicked through to see what it was flagging. The screen loaded the old file. Same name. Elena. Same date of birth. Same address off Candelaria. Report filed on the 14th of March, 2015. By Marisol. Same daughter. Same last name. Same phone number. Except the last 4 digits in the old file were different. Probably because she'd changed carriers at some point. Everything else was identical. I looked up at her. She was watching the little fish screensaver on the office TV in the corner. Someone had put on the channel with the aquarium footage a long time ago, and no one had ever changed it. "Marisol," I said, "have you ever filed a report with us before?" "No," she said. "This is my first time." I said, "Okay." I said, "Give me a minute." I got up and went into the back and pulled the physical file. We keep hard copies of everything from before 2018 in a filing cabinet by the copier. The cabinet drawer always sticks. You have to lift up on the handle and pull. Inside, the folders smelled like paper that had been shut up in a metal box for years. I flipped through until I found the one I needed. It was thinner than I expected. Her handwriting was on it. Same neat block letters. Same signature at the bottom of the intake form, dated March 14th, 2015. In the notes section, the officer who'd taken the report had written, "Reporting party emotional but coherent. State's mother has been missing 3 days." Then, further down, a status update from the 17th. Subject returned home March 17th. No injury. Case closed. 3 days. She'd come back after 3 days. I brought the folder back to my desk. I sat down. Marisol was still watching the fish. I've thought a lot about what to do in that moment. There's no protocol for it. You're not supposed to tell somebody something that might upset them until you've verified. And I had verified, but I still didn't know how to say it. I finally just slid the folder across the desk and said, "Can you look at this for me?" She looked at the folder. She looked at me. Then she opened it. I watched her face. She read the first page slowly. Her eyes moved across each line like she was translating something. She turned to the second page, then back to the first. She kept doing that for a long time. I don't know how long. Long enough that the fluorescent above me clicked probably 20 times. "This is my handwriting," she said. "Yes." "I don't remember this." She wasn't asking me anything. She was just saying it. She put her finger on the date, then on her own signature. "I don't remember this," she said again. I asked her, as gently as I could, if it was possible she'd forgotten, if maybe something had happened around that time that had made her not want to remember. I was reaching. I knew I was reaching. She kept staring at the paper. Then, after maybe a full minute, she said, "She came back." "Excuse me?" "She came back then, 3 days later. She just walked in the house one afternoon and put her purse on the counter." I didn't say anything. "She never told me where she'd been," Marisol said. "I remember that part now. I asked her and she said she'd been out. That was all she said. She wouldn't sit down and talk to me about it. She just started making dinner." She was quiet. Then she said, "Just like now." That's the part I keep coming back to. Not the file, not the match. The way she said it. Not scared. Not confused anymore. She said it the way you say a fact that you've always known and only just remembered you knew. I asked her if she wanted a glass of water. She said no. I asked her if I could still file the report. She said, "Yes, please." I finished the paperwork. She signed the new form with the same neat block letters. Her signature was identical to the one from 2015. I mean identical, like tracing paper identical. She left around 3:30. I watched her cross the parking lot and get into a gray Corolla. She sat in the driver's seat for a while without starting the engine. Then she pulled out. I thought about her over the next 2 days, more than I should have. I ran errands. I watched a show I didn't remember watching. On Thursday night, I looked up Elena's address on Street View just to see the house. Blue trim, gravel driveway, a cottonwood in the front yard that leaned like it was tired. 3 days later, on a Friday, we got a follow-up call. Elena had come home. She'd walked into the house that morning while Marisol was at work. She'd left her purse on the kitchen counter. When Marisol got home that evening, her mother was making dinner. Elena wouldn't say where she'd been. She said she'd been out. That was all. I called Marisol back that afternoon to close the loop. She answered on the second ring. She sounded tired, the same tired as when she'd come in. I asked her if her mother had said anything more. She said no. She'd asked once, over dinner. Her mother had told her not to worry about it and passed her the salt. Marisol thanked me for my time. She hung up. I closed the case. I typed the note into the system. Subject returned home May 28th. No injury. Case closed. The green cursor blinked at me from the black screen. Later that week, I went back to the filing cabinet and pulled the 2015 folder again. I read the officer's notes. Then I read Marisol's original statement. In the statement, in her own handwriting, near the bottom of the last page, there was a line I'd missed the first time. "My mother has done this before," it said, "when I was 9. She was gone for 3 days that time too. She never told us where she'd been." I put the folder back. I closed the drawer. I don't know what makes a person forget something like that. I don't know if Marisol will forget again. I keep the case number written on a post-it in my desk drawer, under the tray with the paper clips, because I have this feeling that in about 6 years, I'm going to be sitting at this desk, and the bell on the front door is going to jingle, and a woman is going to walk in and tell me she needs to report someone missing, and I'm going to look up at her, and she's not going to know me. I don't know what I'll say to her when that happens. I don't know if I'll say anything at all. That's all for today, guys. Write in the comments which story you believe the most, and leave a like if you want more episodes like this. We're not just reading 4chan posts here. We're looking at the details that make them feel possible. And sometimes, possible is scarier than anything dramatic. Take it easy tonight, and I'll see you in the next video.